What's up? We are back with another episode of Sunday Scaries Stock Talk. It is Sunday, February 13th, day before Valentine's Day, 2022. What's going on, Brandon?
I'm my life is in shambles right now. We're recording a little later than normal. I drove back from Nashville. Was hanging out with Dan last weekend. We went to the Nashville Big Corners meetup and everything, and I got home late and I needed some caffeine and everything, and I slept in for probably the longest I've slept in almost a year. So I woke up like 12:30. So um, I'm waking up, I'm getting there, I'm powering through content. You can't coach this kind of effort. And yeah, I mean, here I am.
We've got the Super Bowl tonight too, which is like, so we got to figure out which and on top of doing everything else we're doing, which is putting the newsletter out, doing this podcast, we have to figure out which shitcoin is going to have the coolest commercial and is going to pump the most. So
or the best line, life's too short to bet the under. So
yeah,
financial advice, but
yeah,
it up.
I don't have any. I don't have any money on the game.
Super Bowl call. Give me your call.
Oh man, so full disclosure, I didn't put any money on the game. Made a good amount of money on the UFC fights last night. I don't know. Maybe I'll put something on. I think if I'm doing it, I'm going Bengals. Last time I looked at the line, it was Bengals +4. I don't know. I could see it. I could see the Bengals coming away with a Super Bowl here.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are on the Bengals. Like the whole country, I feel like is rooting for the Bengals over the Rams. Because the Rams just kind of went all in and bought everything. Like they bought Von Miller, Odell Beckham, whatever. So I'll be the first to congratulate the Los Angeles Rams on the Super Bowl title.
My problem is I'm from Cleveland, right? So it's hard to root for another Ohio team. It's hard. It's hard, but I don't know. I don't like the Rams, so maybe I'll throw a bit of money on maybe I'll throw a little money on the Bengals. We'll see.
There you go.
I get a few beers in me.
Let's get into it.
I never make those decisions lightly. I always have to have a few beers in me before I put the money in. So we'll see. I'll get a few deep, and then it'll be a game time decision.
Exactly. All right, well, let's get into it. So we've had a lot of macro stuff that happened within the past week or so. So we're going to be giving our macro minute, then we're going to go into one of the companies in the Bitcoin mining sector today, Marathon Digital Holdings. I probably saw it in the title of the video, title of the podcast, what have you. So first, the macro minute. We had a lot of stuff going on, like I mentioned earlier. On Thursday, what was the date? I don't know. Thursday, maybe the 8th, not the 8th, but 9th, 10th, something like that. They came out with the latest inflation numbers saying that inflation in the United States, the CPI number was 7.5%, the largest amount in over 40 years. So obviously heavy inflation going on. Just give me your overall thoughts on the number released and I guess of the state of affairs.
Yeah, it's not surprising to me. I mean, all these people have been saying that it was, look, it went from this is transitory to it's not as transitory as we thought it was, to headlines from major news outlets in the US saying why inflation's actually a good thing, right? Like none of this is surprising to me. They're continuing to try to pass multi-trillion and multi-billion dollar bills. I mean, the money printer's still on, man. It's like rates are still down near zero. They're not expecting to raise rates until next month. We'll see if they actually do. But with things pending the way they're pending in Europe, especially in Russia and the Ukraine, like, would anybody be surprised if they started pushing this other narrative where it's like, well, we can't crash the economy and go into a war at the same time? So like, I don't know, man. I don't expect this thing to slow down at all. I really don't.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with you here on the inflation stuff. I don't think that they're going to raise rates. I've kind of been pretty adamant that I think they're going to find any way possible to kind of avoid raising rates. You and I've mentioned this before. It's like a midterm election year too in the United States. So with this and Russia kind of looming, a pending war over there, I don't know if you want to kind of give the overarching view of what that is, or the situation over there after this, but yeah, like inflation is just affecting every aspect of your life. We kind of mentioned it on our other podcast. State of Bitcoin, so you guys should check that out. That inflation is, causing massive amounts of rent increase, food prices increasing, everything, to live is basically increasing in price. I filled up my gas tank the other day on the way back from Nashville, and I had to pay $3.50 for a gallon of gas, which is, well over $1.50 more than it was like a few years ago. So it's just going through the roof. Everything's getting more expensive. And that means like the overall capex is getting expensive for more companies, but the stock prices aren't really reflecting that. The stock prices are just kind of shooting up and having massive amounts of growth. And it seems like every time more and more money is printed, these stocks just, go up way more than the average year. So I think we mentioned it before, but the average S&P 500 is like, I believe it goes up like anywhere from like 9 to 11 percent. And I want to say in like 2020, it was up 23% in a year where the economy shut down and everything like that. So the overall investing economy and investing realm in the stock market now has been very inflated, with all the shutdowns and everything like that. There's no way that the average company, the 500 biggest companies, averaged a 23% growth in 2020 with the economy shutting down. And I think that trend is just going to continue. So I would be very cautious getting into the stock market. Obviously, like, not financial advice, but you need to have very good, strong conviction on the companies that you hold and, their underlying business. Do you think it's sustainable? Why are you investing in it? And I think the overall thesis of why you're investing in various companies is important now more than ever, because like we're kind of saying, there's a lot of uncertainty in the macro environment going forward. Inflation's at, highs of, that we've ever seen in our lifetime. And there's also a looming war and a looming situation going on in Russia. So those situations can kind of negatively, inflate, or, maybe positively if you're benefiting from it. But those can manipulate the market a little bit more than, just a normal time where the economy is kind of booming. So what are your thoughts on Russia? What's the kind of situation developing over there? And how do you think that could potentially affect the stock market?
Yeah, tough to say. I'm by no means a political science major or anything like that, but it seems to me, from everybody I've talked to, it seems to me like the US is kind of pushing a narrative, whereas a lot of people in Europe aren't too concerned about it. Like, I know the president of the Ukraine has said that we're basically, like, the US media is basically overhyping this situation, that they've been dealing with the same kind of behavior from Russia for the last 10 years or so, that we're just making a bigger deal out of it than is otherwise necessary. And it's strange, man. I think unfortunately we're in a position now in the US where we have to immediately question ulterior motives when the media starts pushing something heavily. I mean, it's a really unfortunate situation. I don't go to these outlets for news anymore. I just don't trust them. They're happy to feed you narratives like why 7.5% inflation is a good thing, when it's absolutely terrible, especially terrible. You and I talk about this all the time. It's especially terrible for the middle and lower classes in our country. They're the ones that really have to bite the bullet here, because they're the ones that don't have any invested assets. So if you've been in the stock market for the last 2 years, like, your net worth is going up, and you can go to a bank and get out a bigger loan because you can say, like, look at all this money that I've got. Well, the people that don't have any money to invest, these are the people that are going to get hit the hardest when inflation goes up into the double digits. And by the way, the 7.5%, that's an absolute joke. We're way over 7.5%. You mentioned gas prices. Look at home prices. Look at rents. It's insane. It's not 7.5%. It's well over 7.5%. People know this, but the media will continue to feed you these lies about it. So, as far as Russia goes, I'm not sure. Like, I'm really not sure, which is a scary thing to think about. Like, especially as someone with family members who serve in the military, it's like, man, it's a scary thing to think about, that they might just be getting sent overseas really for no reason. So I hope that everything there resolves peacefully, and I hope that we don't stick our nose where it doesn't belong. That's just my personal opinion on the matter. But as far as it goes for investing, I mean, again, we've been saying this all along. It's 2022. It's a mid-year, it's midterm election year. Maybe the Fed will go up, 25 basis points or something, go take us up to 0.5 for interest rate. We'll see what happens to the economy, or the stock market will probably take a 10 to 15% haircut. They'll freak out about it and they'll bring it back down towards zero. That's what I think will happen. I don't see them doing the four rate hikes, which is kind of what they hinted at. I don't see that happening. Maybe in 2023 it'll happen, but I don't see it happening this year. Not
Yeah,
advice.
exactly.
None of that's advice.
It's definitely, yeah, we're by no means experts or anything like that, but we're just kind of, giving everybody our thoughts on the overall macro situation. Because I think in the short term, it depends what your investing outlook is, right? So I think like, Dan's, your situation's kind of unique. You're trying to save for a house. And I think, a lot of people, especially around our age group are definitely trying to do that. And it's just not sustainable to put it in a savings account, high yield savings account, whatever. You're not making enough money to kind of combat the overall, the rise in housing prices, right? So people aren't getting a 7.5% raise, right? And that's the reported number. And inflation's going up by well more. So more and more young people are either going to have to rent if they want to live in a desirable place, or buy a house well far out of the suburbs, maybe like an hour outside of major cities and things like that. So it's really going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Like you mentioned before, inflation kind of affects the lower and middle class a ton more. So if you guys have any of those friends, I definitely encourage you to open up the conversation about investing. Whether it's just simply on index funds or something like that, because the inflation and the financial future of the nation is going to depend on the individuals just getting together and becoming educated on what is going on, and how they can help themselves personally, because as a nation to thrive, we need all the individuals to kind of thrive as well. So I guess that's all I got on the macro minute. If you got anything else, feel free to butt in, but if not, then we can jump right into Marathon Digital.
I'll add one thing, then we can go into Marathon. It's crazy to think that over the last year, your portfolio could have been down 5%, could have been down 7%, and you'd still be outperforming the US dollar. Like it would still have been, you'd have a better store of value being down 7% in the stock market than had you just held the US dollar in your bank account, where it's being hit by inflation at 7.5%. So, these are all things to think about. A lot of people say get into the stock market because you get compound annual growth and all of these things, which is all true. And, but it's just crazy to think that we're at a point now where if your portfolio is at 7%, like you're basically just countering inflation. So it's important to keep these inflation numbers in mind. This is why we're constantly looking at it. Your money is good as purchasing power. Like that's what it's there for. And so if they keep printing money the way that they've been doing, they're adding more of this. They're ruining your purchasing power. So keep that stuff in mind. All right, let's jump into Marathon here.
All right. So like we mentioned before, we're looking at Marathon Digital, or we're taking a deep dive into it. It's one of the largest, I believe it's the largest in market cap of the Bitcoin miners currently in space. So it's like a developing industry, developing sector and all that. We actually did a deep dive into the sector as a whole last week. So if you missed that, or if you're curious on some of the things that we're going in and taking a dive into, then feel free to go back and listen to our last week pod. But yeah, Marathon Digital, one of the biggest. They essentially use various computers and machines to mine Bitcoin. So yeah, that's just, I guess, the overarching business of their company. And so right now, at the time of this recording, the stock price is trading at $26.93, with a market cap of about 2.76 billion Billy. So like he mentioned last week, that the overall sector is just growing rapidly, right? There's more and more Bitcoin adoption, more and more use cases for Bitcoin, more and more people using Bitcoin and like the Lightning Network and things like that, and more companies building on it. And if that's the case, there's going to be some Bitcoin miners that are needed to help this industry thriving. And I think that there's going to be a few big winners in this. And Marathon Digital, we're breaking it down, so we'll give your opinions on the end to see whether or not we think if that's going to be one of the winners. But because of all this rapid growth of the industry, you're seeing rapid growth within their financials as well. Their revenue compared to last quarter even. So this is based on their Q3 results of 2021. In Q2, compared to Q2, their revenue increased 76%. So within 3 months, a 3-month period, the revenue increased to 76%. And compared to last year, it's 6,091% to 51.7 million. So although the company still is not making any money, their revenue is growing drastically and at a very, very rapid pace. I believe we said last year that the overall Bitcoin mining market was, I want to say it was like 15 billion with a B. And so, they're obviously scooping up more of that market share. And yeah, so from there, they also produced 1,252 Bitcoin from their self-mined, and that's almost double from what they did in the previous quarter at 654. So they're starting to figure this out. They're starting to figure out how to mine more and more Bitcoins. They're acquiring more machines and everything like that. So overall, very rapid growth, and from Q2 to Q3, even the company is rapidly growing. So we're going to get into a little bit of our bullish and bearish thesis here. So Dan, why don't you go ahead and go give us the bullish thesis, and I'll go and try to, I guess, combat you a little bit on the bearish thesis, and then we'll give our overall opinions on the company.
Sure. I'll also just say this. So on Marathon's digital holdings website, they release monthly reports. A lot of these mining companies do this, which I love about the industry. It's a little different than companies that just put out quarterlies. And so if you're interested in these companies, you can go and just check out their monthlies too. So here's as of February 1st, 2022, Marathon produced 462.1 self-mined Bitcoin during January. So during the previous month. That's an 816% increase from what they mined in January 2021. So over 800% year-over-year increase in the amount of Bitcoin that they mined. As of February 1st, again, Marathon had increased its total Bitcoin holdings to approximately 8,595 Bitcoin. That has a fair market value of just under $331 million. So that's absolutely awesome. And then their existing mining fleet, which I believe is approximately 133,000 mining rigs. Oh, wait, here. Oh, I'm seeing something different here.
Oh, there we go. This is just as prime content here. We're looking it up as we're going through.
Well, no, so
I'm seeing, I mean, there is a lot of information about these companies, so
well, I'm just seeing
obviously
I'm seeing a little just a little conflicting info. Oh, this is why. So by mid 2022, they expect to have all 133,000 miners deployed. Okay, so I'm seeing this. All right, so forget this last point that I'm making, but their projected hash rate is basically through the roof into 2023 and 2024. So check out those monthlies, and you can get a good idea of like what their hash rate is, how many Bitcoin they're producing, how many Bitcoin they're holding, all things that last week we said were key metrics in this industry. So go back, read last week's newsletter, check out our pod. We identify several key things that we think are important for these companies. And most of these companies have like a monthly report where they announce those things. So always good stuff to look at. All right, let me jump into the bullish thesis here. So the 3 points that I have are that Marathon has an opportunity to become kind of a first mover in this industry. Still a relatively young industry, and Marathon is huge. They've shown over the last 2 years, especially, that they're willing to put money into growing their operation, which we'll talk a little bit more about. They've got a massive growth potential, and they're obviously willing to spend the money. That's my second point. In fact, last month in December, they announced that they're purchasing an additional 78,000 S9 miners from Bitmain. That deal is worth approximately $879 million. Those miners are set to be distributed to to Marathon throughout 2022. I believe they begin sending those to Marathon in July, and they're going to receive about 13,000 mining rigs per month all the way through December. By early 2023, they expect to have 199,000 miners fully operational, and that would increase their hash rate by nearly 600% from current levels to approximately 23.3 exahashes per second. That would be absolutely huge. Like, you think they're producing Bitcoin now, wait until that happens. My last point is that there's positive news on the regulatory stability in the US, which is where they operate out of. They've got a major mining center in Montana, and another one I believe is opening up in Texas. These are two states that are very bullish on Bitcoin. They've got senators who have expressed interest in making or adopting positive regulatory stances toward these companies. So I'm really bullish on that. We still have to wait and see. There's a lot of stuff that's progressing from a regulatory perspective, but I love in the US that they're operating in states that are bullish on Bitcoin. So we'll see. I mean, there could be some federal stuff that happens that makes me a little more bearish, but at the moment, Montana and Texas, I don't think you could ask for two better states for a Bitcoin mining company to be in. So that's kind of what I have for the bullish.
All right. Well, now I will give you a little bit of the bearish thesis. So I'll kind of combat you on the I guess the regulation. So you said they're in two states that are fairly friendly to Bitcoin miners, and that's true. The United States as a whole is kind of not really rejected, and they kind of have more of a stable government. But we've seen, previously, countries like China and now Kazakhstan making it very difficult for Bitcoin miners. So, being based in one country kind of, might not be the best situation. I kind of like to see some of these Bitcoin miners jumping all over the place, having a place in the United States, maybe in Canada and some other places, and being diversified. So they're not centralized in one area where they're, required to they're basically at will to the regulators there. So there is that kind of situation, and then there's also the regulations in the United States. Marathon might need to have to find something where they're using renewable energy to to mine the Bitcoin, because there is that popular ESG narrative in the United States, at least, where Bitcoin mining uses too much energy, yada, yada, yada. We're both Bitcoin guys. And so, through and through, I believe that that's not really the case, but the regulators who aren't necessarily educated on the topic or anything like that, they might need to change or just do something to kind of please them, which isn't always the greatest thing, especially when you're investing in a company that could be polarized or changed by some regulators. The other point I have is that there's a lot of reliance on mining and rig manufacturers. So they don't currently develop any of their own chips or any of their own computers or anything like that. And so we've seen a big drastic issue with supply chain. And there was also a chip shortage. I think we're kind of crawling our way out of it right now. But because of all that, Bitcoin miners might be one of the first ones that kind of get hit, because they could claim that they need chips for other things like cars or something else to kind of help with the overall economy and make Bitcoin a little bit more secondary. There are big companies getting into the mix, like Intel, which is nice. So you're seeing a lot of these larger companies kind of get into the area of Bitcoin mining, developing chips and things like that. We even have Block, who's starting to develop, I believe, like home miners, but that's for another time. So all these companies are kind of getting into it, but they're also at the whim of these other companies for developing Bitcoin miners. So they have a lot of capital, and they can, purchase a lot of these miners, but also at the same time, they're kind of relying on like third-party companies, which might not be the best situation. And then there's also, a lot of major companies that can enter into this Bitcoin mining realm. Of course, Marathon Digital has a leg up because they've already started doing it, and that's kind of the basis of their company. And at the beginning, I think successful companies are very like narrowly focused, right? So a company that like Intel, for example, I don't think that they're necessarily getting into Bitcoin mining or they're going to keep any of these Bitcoin miners, but they might. You never know, they might. And so if they do, they're kind of moving away from their core business of developing chips, and then they might look at Bitcoin mining as like maybe something secondary. And if that's the case, it might hurt Intel as a whole, but they're such a large business and such a large company that they could come in and kind of put it as a secondary option and hire a bunch of people. And they have the capital to do that, to kind of squash some of these little guys that are just coming into the market, or not coming into just coming into the market, but just kind of starting out. So currently Marathon doesn't make any money. They actually lose a little bit of money, but it's all being developed and pushed into their company. So you hope that the growth can sustain, and that they can start to mine more and more Bitcoin, and that that helps their overall business. And then the last negative point, obviously Dan and I are both Bitcoin guys, and we believe in the industry, we believe in the technology and all that. But there is also the point where, if you're an investor in the stock market and you don't understand Bitcoin mining, or you don't understand Bitcoin, mining or investing in a Bitcoin miner just doesn't really make sense to you, because if you believe Bitcoin's going to fail, then, why would you invest inside a company that's basically their overall arching business is surrounding Bitcoin? But the one point that I'll kind of combat on that right now is that in order for the Bitcoin network to work, there needs to be miners. So as long as Bitcoin's around, there will be Bitcoin mining companies, and there will be this industry. So it really depends on how you view all that. Dan, what's your overall thoughts on Marathon Digital as a company? And are you going to be looking into it a little bit more? You think that this is a company you might invest in? Go ahead. Mike's all yours.
Yeah, I'm not currently an investor. I do invest in several other Bitcoin mining companies. There's really, like, the ones I invest in are people that I've heard talk on interviews and things, and I like their leadership. And I just haven't heard that much out of Marathons. But as I'm looking into it, it's definitely something I'm interested in. I will say this about the regulation stuff too. So they're opening a new facility in Texas that will house, at least they're in their short-term plan, will house 73,000 miners, and it will be 100% carbon neutral. The other thing is, by mid 2022, they expect that all 133,000 of their miners will be deployed, and that they'll be mining with operations that are 70% carbon neutral. So I think if you're looking at it from this ESG perspective, which I despise, but if you are looking at it from that perspective, I think they're probably doing enough to address the political concerns that come with the ESG narrative. Like I don't know if any of these companies legitimately think that they need to be doing these things, but at the very least, they're showing that they can do that. So I think that's bullish for me from a regulatory perspective on Marathon. Again, I could care less where they're getting their energy from, but I think they're at least considering that when it comes to regulations. And this kind of goes back to my first mover thing too. It's like, one of the benefits of being a first mover is that you're an established company. You've got the liaisons with DC, those kinds of things, and you get a little bit more lobbying power, I suppose. Which, like it or hate it, it's part of the game. So I like it, man. I like Marathon. I'm bullish on the sector as a whole. So yeah, I could definitely see myself putting some money into it. Again, not advice, and I don't currently hold it, but yeah, I like it. I like Marathon.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, so like I stated at the beginning, it's the biggest holder or the biggest market cap of any of the Bitcoin miners right now. And so yeah, I agree with your points. I'm bullish overall in the sector. I currently hold WGMI, the Bitcoin mining ETF, which I believe has some Marathon in its holdings. And so I guess technically in some roundabout way, I am a holder. But I unless I have those holdings wrong, which very much could be the case. But yeah, I agree with you. I think like being one of the first movers and being the big dog in a small pond right now is very beneficial for Marathon. And I think that they're moving towards like the regulations. The only one thing I'd like to see is like maybe diversifying out of the United States and kind of trying to join a decentralized and in their company and have a few branches all over the globe. But other than that, I think it's a very strong and growing company. And, just based on the financials and the numbers, it's growing very rapidly. And so because of that, it's definitely a positive outlook for the stock and everything going forward. And, overall, I'm just bullish on Bitcoin as a whole. So I think there's going to be some winners and losers in here. And I think Marathon could definitely be one of the winners, but obviously not financial advice.
I'm looking at WGMI. So they've updated their holdings as of February 11th, which is Friday. I thought, Brandon, when they launched, I thought Marathon was up there, but it's not even in their top 10 anymore. It's still AMD, it's Argo, it's Bitfarms, Bit Digital. Where's Marathon, man? HUD 8 is just above it. It's Marathon is number 13 on their list of holdings.
Wow.
And
That's interesting. So they have HUD 8 in their top 15, I guess, because like before it wasn't in their top 10, or is it in their
it's in HUD 8 now is 12th, it looks like. Yeah, so it's 12th. I'm trying to figure out how these things are
Yeah,
listed,
so
but
in
it's
their top
interesting.
10 holdings when they first launched, Marathon Digital was number 9. So so I guess they sold some of their Marathon Digital and moved it down in their holding percentage, because before it was 4% of the overall holdings. But that's interesting. It's definitely something to keep track of, especially because this ETF just launched and they're already changing their holdings within like less than a week. So maybe they know something a little bit more that we don't. But
Oh, no. This is my fault. I had it. This is my fault. Let's go to shares. I had it sorted the wrong way. Okay, so
you can't coach this kind of content. We our brains are kind of mush on Sundays. We're all going hard during the weekend. We're cranking out content, doing all that kind of stuff for us. So
okay, so here you go. So if you go by weight, percentage weight, it is in there. It's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's number 6. So it is still
okay. So they might have then they increased their holdings from the last time because it was at 9.
Okay.
With 4% of their overall weight. So positive sign if an ETF that is researching every single one of these companies, or at least all the publicly available companies, and putting them in an ETF. It's encouraging to see that they're increasing the holdings. So overall bullish on the sector, bullish on Marathon, not financial advice, of course. But yeah, I like it overall. Any last closing remarks on Marathon Digital or Bitcoin mining?
No, I mean, I think we're going to go through a couple more companies. I think we'll do maybe HUD 8 and Bitfarms, and maybe we should throw in another one with WGMI, because when we put out last week's, WGMI hadn't launched yet, hadn't even been approved, and then it got approved and launched immediately. So maybe we'll add that as kind of a broad exposure type stock opportunity. And
yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll probably end up going through the ETF at some point in time. I would imagine maybe at the end we'll do the individual companies, and if any of these don't sound appealing but you're still bullish on the sector, you should definitely give the WGMI a look. Obviously, Dan and I are both holders, so not financial advice, and I want to preface all that stuff that do your own research and everything like that. But yeah, this is it for the Sunday Scaries Stock Talk. So we hope you enjoyed our episode. Subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a review, and let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you think of everything. We're getting more and more content based around the stock and Bitcoin stuff. So right now we do 2 newsletters a week. Monday, we release a stock breakdown. So kind of going through the things that we talked about today, but slightly more in depth with some of the numbers and a couple of sentences on our bullish and bearish thesis. And then we release this podcast, obviously. And then Tuesday night, we do a live Twitter spaces on our Twitter at Green Candle IT. So follow us there. We started at 8 p.m. Eastern. You could bring a stock and we can argue about it a little bit. We usually talk about like the overall stock market, what kind of companies we're looking at, and et cetera, et cetera. And then Friday, we release a bunch of Bitcoin related content. Friday morning, we release our podcast and video called the State of Bitcoin. So give us a check us out there at podcast players or on our YouTube channel. And then we also do a Twitter spaces along with our newsletter. So our Twitter spaces is at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. And that's our world famous Bitcoin happy hour where we come with a group of people and kind of talk about the macro and overall Bitcoin ethos and state of Bitcoin. So yeah, subscribe to the newsletter at greencandleinvestments.substack.com. Follow us on Twitter at greencandleit or Instagram. You can find the link to our bio or in our bio of the newsletter there. And then, yeah, follow the host at bkeys1010 at pvo_Dan. You can find our personal handles within our Green Candle bio. Anything else that I'm missing?
No, I think that's it. Follow us on Twitter. That's
All
where
right.
you're going to get the most up-to-date info at Green Candle IT.
Perfect. All right. Well, that's a wrap. Bing bong.